Under the weightless breath of eternity, before the heavens learned to glow, and before the earth found its shape, there was only stillness. It was not darkness nor light, but a boundless sigh, an unformed dream suspended between being and not. The cosmos floated in its own silence, a womb of endless potential, waiting for something, someone, to stir its slumber. There was no sound, only the faint vibration of what could be, the tender heartbeat of existence, too shy yet to begin. From that silent sea of nothingness rose the first murmur of creation. Mist coiled upon itself like silk, folding in slow motion, and the breath of possibility began to weave threads of wind and water. Rivers formed without courses, their liquid bodies seeking meaning in a landscape that did not yet exist. Clouds hung low, uncertain of where to rest, and the sky trembled with unnamed desire. The air shimmered with warmth, as though the void itself longed to be touched, to be known, to be alive. And from this yearning, Nuwa emerged. She did not appear as a spark or a storm, but as a movement so gentle that even the mists bowed to her passing. Her form rose from the union of earth and water, the supple fluidity of a river and the steady patience of stone. Her skin glowed with the hue of dawn newly born, her hair like the dark flow of night cascading over her shoulders. Around her waist coiled the body of a serpent, its scales glistening like moonlit jade, yet her upper body bore the shape of a woman, divine, delicate, and infinitely knowing. When she opened her eyes, the void trembled. Their light was not blinding, but soothing, two orbs of molten amber that reflected every dream the world had not yet dared to imagine. With a single breath, she stirred the air into motion. The first winds sighed her name. The rivers quivered in response, finding rhythm in her presence. Even the unshaped clay beneath her touch began to warm, as though recognizing the mother it had been waiting for. Nuwa wandered through the empty expanse, her steps leaving traces of color and sound. Where her fingers brushed the mist, it condensed into dew, pearls of life forming on invisible threads. Her movement was slow and tender, as though she feared breaking the fragile silence that surrounded her. She was alone, yet her solitude was not sorrowful. It was contemplative, filled with quiet yearning. She felt the hum of the world to be vibrating beneath her skin, a pulse that matched the rhythm of her own heart. The cosmos, sensing her presence, began to respond. From the horizonless deep, the first mountains swelled, their peaks glistening like polished jade under a newborn light. The rivers found paths to follow, carving soft melodies into the body of the land. The wind learned to dance, threading through the trees that sprouted at her feet. Even the sky, once a shapeless veil, began to glow, pale at first, then deepening into shades of gold and blue.
Nuwa lifted her gaze to the heavens she had unknowingly inspired, and a tremor passed through her. The beauty unfolding around her was exquisite, yet incomplete. The heavens arched above her like a vast mirror, reflecting her form, her thoughts, her longing. And in that reflection, she felt a strange ache. The world was awakening, but it was silent still, uninhabited, untouched by emotion beyond her own. She realized then that she was both creator and witness, mother and child of solitude. The river's laughter could not answer her heart. The whispering winds offered her caresses, but not companionship. She moved through this blooming world as one might move through a dream, surrounded by wonder, yet untouched by it. Every leaf trembled when she passed, every ripple stretched toward her reflection, yet nothing could speak, nothing could return her gaze with understanding. The world was alive, but it was not yet complete. In her stillness, Nuwa listened. The sound of water sliding against stone, the faint murmur of leaves brushing together, the echo of her own breath. These small symphonies awakened something within her, a tender longing, not for power or dominion, but for connection. The same yearning that had stirred the void now pulsed within her. She closed her eyes, and the air thickened with warmth. Her thoughts moved like tides. She imagined forms that might one day walk this earth, beings that could feel, speak, and dream as she did. Creatures that could look upon the sky and know its beauty, not as a miracle beyond them, but as a reflection within. The idea was fragile, yet radiant. The pulse of creation thrummed deeper in her veins, and she realized that she carried not only the power to form, but the desire to share. The mist coiled tighter around her, wrapping her in veils of silver and gold. She lifted her hands, and the air quivered in anticipation, but she hesitated. What was she seeking? Companionship or a reflection of herself? Was her longing born of divine love or divine loneliness? These questions trembled like light upon water, without answer. Yet even without understanding, she felt the call to create growing stronger, as natural as breathing, as inevitable as dawn. The world waited, listening to her heartbeat. Nuwa stepped into a shallow pool where the first light touched the surface. The ripples rang around her, caressing her serpentine tail, gliding up her human form like silk drawn by invisible fingers. Her reflection shimmered beneath her, soft, luminous, infinitely delicate. She felt the warmth of her own presence radiating outward, spreading into the mist. The earth itself seemed to exhale beneath her feet, sighing in surrender to her touch. Everywhere she looked, life was potential, a blank page aching for ink, a silence begging for song. The scent of rain and clay filled the air. She knelt beside the pool and pressed her palm against the damp soil. It was cool and pliant, yielding to her, as if it too longed to be shaped. She traced her fingers through it slowly, lovingly, as one might trace the contours of a sleeping lover's face. Each motion released a shimmer of warmth, each caress a promise. Though the act of creation had not yet begun, the world already responded as though it understood her intent. The wind curled around her shoulders like a lover's breath, and the earth throbbed softly beneath her feet. Time itself seemed to pause, reverent before what was about to happen.
Nuwa whispered her first words, though there was no language yet. The sound was pure vibration, the tone of the heart before speech, an echo of affection, a melody of existence. The mists parted, revealing the first true horizon, where light met shadow in tender equilibrium. The universe blushed in colors never seen before, and the rivers sang back to her in rippling delight. In that sacred stillness, she smiled. Her gaze drifted to the heavens again, and she saw them quiver, as though the stars, unborn yet already aware, leaned closer to witness her. The curve of her lips carried the weight of destiny and the softness of a sigh. She understood that this world, vast and pure, was her reflection. It mirrored her grace, her longing, her infinite tenderness, but it was empty without others to feel its rhythm. Nuwa's eyes softened with affection, and her hand rested upon her heart. Beneath her touch, she could feel the same pulse that had once stirred the void into life. It was the heartbeat of creation, not a command, but an invitation. Her existence was the world's first act of love, and love demanded to be shared. The air shimmered around her, fragrant with warmth and dew. The heavens pulsed with a low, resonant hum, as though awaiting the next breath that would shape them. And in that moment, standing between heaven and earth, Nuwa knew that the story of the world had only just begun. She was the first whisper of desire, the first heartbeat of beauty, the first sigh of connection between the divine and the mortal yet to come. And the cosmos at last exhaled. The rivers danced in praise, the wind spun in adoration, and the mountains bowed beneath her glow. The silence that once ruled the void was now alive, filled with the quiet murmur of becoming. Everything, everywhere leaned toward her presence, recognizing her not merely as a goddess, but as the essence of tenderness itself. In that sacred dawn, the world found its first pulse, and Nuwa, radiant and alone, smiled into the newborn horizon, knowing that love, not power, was the true beginning of creation.
Nuwa's world ripened beneath her gaze. The mists that once veiled the sky dissolved into a pale glow, and the earth shimmered with quiet vitality. Wherever she passed, the air grew warm and full of scent. The rivers murmured her name, the wind sighed against her skin, and even the mountains seemed to tilt toward her in reverence. She was not merely a goddess, she was the pulse that joined all things, the breath that moved between water and sky. Her presence carried both stillness and motion, as if every moment held its own heartbeat. When she moved, the world moved with her. When she rested, the land exhaled in peace. Nature adored her, not through choice, but instinct. It bent toward her as flowers bend to the sun. Yet within this perfect harmony, a quiet ache lingered, a space untouched, a silence that no sound could fill. She often walked along the newborn rivers, her serpentine tail gliding through the shallow water. The ripples followed her rhythm, curling around her hips as if alive. When she breathed, the wind changed course to follow the scent of her hair. When she whispered, the water responded, trembling in delicate waves. But all of it, the songs, the sighs, the endless devotion, were echoes of her own heartbeat. Nature adored her, yet could not know her. Its love was reflection, not response. One day, as she lingered by a still lake, she looked into her reflection and saw the loneliness that beauty could not erase. The light on the water trembled beneath her gaze. Her fingers brushed the surface, and the ripples spread outward in slow silver circles. For a moment, she imagined another hand reaching back, another soul that could see her as she was, not as the world did. The wish lingered in her like a note unresolved. Then the air stirred. From the horizon, where the mist met the sky, a figure began to form, faint at first, as though the light itself was gathering into shape. A body emerged from vapor and glow, serpentine and strong. His eyes opened, and in them she saw recognition. Not worship, not fear, but something startlingly familiar. He was not separate from her creation. He was born of the same longing that stirred her heart. This being, later known as Fushi, approached with a grace that mirrored her own. His lower body coiled like a river current, his upper form radiant as dawn. When their gazes met, the world seemed to pause. The rivers stilled, the wind held its breath, even the sky dimmed to a soft hush. Nuwa felt the air between them thrum like the plucked string of a zither. They did not speak. Language was not yet born, and none was needed. His eyes traced her form with reverence, but also curiosity, the gaze of a kindred soul. She reached out, and when her fingers touched his shoulder, a ripple of light spread across the heavens. The air bloomed with warmth. The mountains bowed. The rivers brightened. It was as though existence itself had been waiting for this single gesture, for connection, for recognition, for companionship.
Nuwa's heart swelled. In him she saw her reflection made whole, strength and gentleness entwined, sky meeting earth. Together they wandered the growing world, leaving trails of life wherever they passed. The grass rose higher to meet their steps. Flowers unfurled at their laughter. The sun glowed more tenderly when it touched their skin. Yet as days unfolded, though time was still only the rhythm of their breathing, Nuwa began to sense the boundary of their unity. Huchi was part of her, and she of him, two halves of the same divine essence. When he looked at her, it was like seeing herself from another angle, beautiful yet familiar. Their closeness soothed her, but did not quiet her deeper longing. She wanted something neither reflection nor echo, something unpredictable, imperfect, alive. Fuxi could match her thought, but not surprise it. He could mirror her heart, but not change its rhythm. When he smiled, she felt joy. When he grieved, she felt the same ache. They were companions, yet also captives of symmetry. Sometimes she would drift away from him to walk alone beneath the newborn trees. Their leaves shimmered like jade under the soft light, rustling with secrets they could not speak. She would lie upon the grass and feel the slow, steady heartbeat of the earth beneath her. In that rhythm she imagined smaller hearts, fragile, warm, fleeting. Beings who could love without knowing why, who could fail, fall, and rise again. She imagined them wandering through the meadows she had shaped, their laughter carried by the wind. She saw them looking up at the stars with wonder instead of understanding. The thought filled her with a sweetness that bordered on pain. Perfection, she realized, was beautiful, but lifeless. Only the fragile tremble of imperfection could make beauty real. Fuxi watched her from afar during these moments. He understood, though he could not feel the yearning as she did. His nature was balance, hers creation. He was harmony. She was the desire that broke it to make something new. When she returned to him, he would smile, his eyes calm, but within them she sensed fear. The fear of being left behind by the one whose dream reached beyond gods. Yet Nuwa's affection for him did not fade. She cherished his steadiness, his quiet strength, his willingness to walk beside her through the vast silence of the world. Together they shaped valleys, traced the patterns of rivers, and taught the winds to sing. When they rested, their bodies entwined like rivers merging, warm, unhurried, inevitable. In his arms she found comfort, though not completion.
As time unfolded, the world grew lush and full, but still silent. The rivers laughed, but with borrowed joy. The wind whispered, but not with words. Nuwa felt her pulse quicken, the same deep rhythm that had once awakened the void. It was the heartbeat of longing, of love unspent. Creation had answered her once with Fuxi. Now it called for more. One evening, she stood upon a high hill overlooking the expanse of her creation. The sun rested low, bleeding gold into the rivers, while the sky shimmered with a soft, yearning blue. She raised her hand, and the wind curled around her fingers like a familiar lover. Every sound, every scent, every breath of the world seemed to press closer, asking silently, "What comes next?" Nua's eyes filled with light. The heavens above glowed in response, their faint stars blinking awake. The earth trembled gently beneath her feet, alive with expectation. Fuxi came to stand beside her, his gaze following hers. "The world is perfect," his silence seemed to say. But she only smiled. Perfect, she had learned, was not enough. The rivers adored her, the winds obeyed her, the mountains bowed to her, yet none could love her freely. Love that does not choose is worship, not companionship. What she desired now was a different song, one carried by voices that trembled, by hearts that could break. She turned toward the horizon, her hair lifting in the wind like black silk in flame. In her chest burned a warmth that felt almost human, the ache to give life not from power, but from tenderness. She would shape beings from the same earth she had walked, breathe into them her own longing, and teach them what the stars could never know: how to feel, how to err, how to love. The rivers hushed, the wind stilled. Even Fuxi watched in quiet awe. He sensed what she was about to do, to reach beyond divinity into the realm of mortal imperfection. Yet he did not stop her. Perhaps he knew that this was her nature, the essence of who she was, both creator and lover, goddess and dreamer.
the heart of all tenderness. Nuwa looked once more upon the world she had shaped, its valleys curved like sleeping bodies, its rivers gleaming like veins. Everything pulsed with her essence, and yet she thought it was only the beginning. She placed her hand upon the earth, feeling its warmth rise to meet her palm. "You will breathe soon," she whispered softly, and the soil quivered under her touch. The heavens bent low, as though listening to her promise. Nuwa closed her eyes. The air shimmered with her resolve, gentle, powerful, unending. Through her, creation would finally learn to feel, and through her longing, it would learn to love.
The world lay still beneath Nuwa's gaze, vast, beautiful, and silent. The rivers gleamed like silver threads, the trees whispered with reverent devotion, and the heavens arched in flawless symmetry. Yet within that perfection pulsed an emptiness she could not quiet. Every leaf, every ripple, every breath of wind was born from her will. None could surprise her, none could speak her name with warmth or wonder. The beauty she had shaped was obedient, not alive. Each day she wandered among her creations, searching for an echo of her own longing. The mountains greeted her with solemn silence, their peaks glistening like frozen prayers. The rivers sang her reflection, and the clouds trailed after her as though trying to touch her hair. Still, she felt the ache of incompleteness, not absence, but a hunger for something that could love her back. Perfection, she realized, was a form of solitude. At night, when the air thickened with the scent of rain, she would sit beside a still lake and watch her reflection ripple in the water. Sometimes she spoke softly to it, tracing her fingers across the surface as though her own image might answer. The water trembled beneath her touch, responding like skin awakened by affection, but it remained silent. This silence filled her like a sigh too deep to release. Fushi would sometimes find her there, his presence quiet and patient. His eyes carried understanding, yet no comfort. He too belonged to the divine order, shaped from her same essence. She cherished his nearness, yet even his warmth could not reach the place within her that longed for something other, something born not of will, but of wonder. One evening, as dusk folded itself over the world, Nuwa's heart stirred with restless urgency. She rose and walked to the edge of a river that glowed with the colors of sunset. The river swirled in delicate spirals, curling around her ankles as if pleading to be more than motion. She knelt and pressed her palms into the soft clay. It was cool and pliant beneath her fingers. She lifted a handful, letting it slip through her hands, watching how it caught the light before returning to the earth. In that moment, she felt it, the spark that bridged divine thought and mortal possibility. The clay was unformed, but within it she sensed a pulse, a whisper of potential. It was the same vibration that had once stirred the void before her birth, the same longing that had birthed stars and rivers. She smiled softly. Creation, she realized, was not power.
It was desire made visible. She gathered the clay again, holding it tenderly as one might cradle a fragile heart. Her fingers began to move with deliberate grace. Each motion was slow, sensual, filled with intention. The substance yielded under her touch, warm now from her palms. She shaped a curve, a limb, a face. The texture of the clay against her skin awakened something within her, the sensation of giving form not only to matter, but to emotion.
Her breath deepened as she worked, the rhythm of her heart syncing with the earth's. Sweat shimmered along her temples, gliding down her neck in trails of light. Around her, the air thickened with the scent of rain and life. Each stroke of her hand upon the clay was both a caress and a command, an act of devotion that blurred the line between creation and love. When she finished, a small figure lay upon the ground before her, delicate, incomplete, but radiant with possibility. Nuwa gazed upon it with awe. Its stillness mirrored her own first awakening. She brushed her fingers over its face. The clay was cold at first, then warm beneath her touch, as though yearning to know her. "Breathe," she whispered, her voice trembling with both power and tenderness. She pressed her lips to its brow, and in that kiss she gave it part of her essence, a breath that carried emotion, fragility, and longing. The figure stirred. A shiver ran through the air. The heavens opened in soft brilliance. The wind held its breath. The small body inhaled, its chest rising in rhythm with her own. Nuwa's eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but of wonder. For the first time, she was not alone in her creation. She watched the little being blink, its gaze unfocused but alive. It reached toward her, its tiny hand brushing her finger. The touch was faint, yet it burned through her like sunlight through mist. It was imperfect, fragile, mortal. And in that imperfection, she found a beauty beyond the divine. Nuwa laughed softly, a sound like rain falling on leaves. Her laughter carried across the water, echoed by the rivers, repeated by the mountains. The world seemed to rejoice with her, awakening in harmony with her joy. Fuxi appeared beside her, silent, watching. His eyes softened as he beheld the new creation. "It is alive," his gaze seemed to say. Nuwa nodded, her heart trembling. "Yes," she whispered, "alive." But even as she spoke, she felt the pull of her desire deepen. One was not enough. The void within her had been touched but not filled. She reached for the clay again, her movements swifter now, almost feverish. Her hands molded life after life, her touch guided by instinct more than thought. Each creation bore traces of her, the curve of her hand, the warmth of her breath, the rhythm of her heart. The earth responded with abundance. The rivers flowed brighter, the air shimmered with vitality. The small beings stirred and stood, their eyes wide with curiosity. Some laughed, others wept without knowing why. Their voices rose together in fragile, beautiful chaos that filled the once silent world.
Nuwa's body trembled with exhaustion, yet she could not stop. Each act of creation felt like both surrender and fulfillment, a dance between power and tenderness. Her hands were smeared with clay, streaked with the proof of her longing. Fuxi reached toward her, concern in his gaze, but she only smiled. "I must," she murmured. "They are pieces of what I have been missing." He understood, though he could not share her ache. He watched as she knelt among the living, surrounded by her children of earth. They reached toward her, unafraid, drawn by her warmth. One touched her cheek, another wrapped its tiny fingers around her wrist. Their contact was clumsy, imperfect, yet achingly real. In that closeness, Nuwa felt herself dissolve into something larger. She was no longer the lonely goddess who shaped the stars, nor the solitary architect of rivers. She was mother, lover, heartbeat. Her divinity blurred into emotion, her power softened by tenderness. And yet, beneath the joy, she felt a thread of sorrow. These beings were mortal. Their lives flickered with fragility. They would age, falter, fade. Their laughter would one day turn to silence. She had created them from love, but love itself was bound to loss. Still, she could not regret it. The fragility of their existence made them beautiful. They were everything she had longed for, imperfect, unpredictable, alive. Each breath they took reminded her that the world was finally awake. She sat among them as the sun rose, its light gliding over her skin and theirs alike. The air shimmered with warmth, thick with the scent of clay and life. The children of the earth clung to her, their small voices blending with the songs of rivers and wind. Fuxi stood at a distance, watching the transformation. The perfection of the divine world was gone, replaced by laughter and tears. Yet even he, who loved balance, could not deny the beauty of what she had done. Nuwa lifted her gaze to the heavens. The stars flickered like curious eyes, witnessing the birth of feeling. She smiled faintly, her heart aching and full. The act of creation had not quieted her desire, it had deepened it, teaching her that love and loss were one. The wind brushed against her cheek like a lover's sigh. The clay beneath her hands trembled with the pulse of 1,000 fragile hearts. Nuwa closed her eyes and let the sensation wash through her. Her longing had given the world its voice, and though she knew every heartbeat she made would one day stop, she also knew this: perfection was sterile, but love would always endure.
The sky trembled. The heavens, once seamless, split open with a cry that shook every river and stone. What had been whole began to fracture. The pillars of the world quivered, and the sky sagged, spilling torrents of flame and water. Mountains collapsed, rivers surged from their beds, and the beings Nuwa had shaped screamed in terror. Their fragile voices pierced her like blades. She stood at the heart of the storm, her creations clinging to her legs, trembling. The chaos was familiar, a reflection of the void before time, before her touch had brought order. But this was different.
It was not the emptiness of nothingness, it was the chaos of life breaking under its own weight. She felt it within herself. The same fracture that split the heavens now ran through her chest. Hushi's voice reached her through the roar of the elements. He said, "The sky is falling. The balance cannot hold." Nuwa looked upward. The cracks across the firmament glowed like veins of fire, bleeding light into the world. Each break widened, devouring the calm she had once known. She thought of the people she had made, their laughter, their touch, their fragile joy. To lose them now would mean to lose herself. "No," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but her resolve did not. "If the sky falls, I will hold it." She stepped forward, leaving the safety of the valley. The wind struck her, tearing at her hair, whipping against her body. Dust and light clung to her skin, coating her in a glow that seemed born from both fury and tenderness. Each step felt heavier, the earth beneath her feet quaking as if protesting the path she chose. When she reached the broken edge of the heavens, she lifted her gaze to the wound above, vast and bleeding, weeping stars like tears. She reached out her hands, and the air itself bent to her will. Around her, the world seemed to pause, holding its breath. She sank her fingers into the earth, feeling its pulse, warm, ancient, alive. From its depths, she drew great stones, molten and red. The rocks pulsed in her palms like living hearts, heavy with fire. One by one, she placed them into the gaps above, the heat licking her skin, searing her hands. The pain was sharp, exquisite, yet she did not flinch. Each stone fit into the broken firmament with a sound like a sigh, as if the heavens themselves recognize her touch. The light from the wound reflected across her body, tracing every curve, every line, making her glow like the dawn reborn. Her breath came in gasps, not of weakness, but of effort that bordered on ecstasy. The act of mending was both agony and rapture. Every pulse of pain echoed through her with the same rhythm that once guided her in creation.
The sky resisted at first, as if unwilling to be healed. The winds howled, the flames lashed her face, but Nuwa stood firm. She pressed her body against the cracks, her bare skin meeting the jagged light. The fire scorched her, but where it touched her, new stars bloomed. Her tears fell upon the molten rock, cooling it into crystal veins that shimmered like liquid moonlight. The heavens began to settle. Slowly, the chaos gave way to trembling calm. Yet the damage was vast, more than her power alone could repair. She looked down at the rivers below, at the terrified faces of her creations. The sight pierced her deeper than the flames. She could not stop. She gathered more stones, this time of 5 sacred colors: red, yellow, blue, white, and black. Each represented a piece of her essence, a fragment of the world's soul. As she shaped them, they hummed softly, resonating with her heartbeat. She lifted them one by one toward the heavens. The red stone burned with passion, the yellow with warmth,
the blue with sorrow, the white with hope, and the black with mystery. Together, they formed a new firmament, one that bore not perfection, but endurance. Her hands trembled as she placed the final stone. Her strength waned, her vision blurred. The heat from the heavens poured down upon her, surrounding her like a lover's embrace, fierce, consuming, eternal. She felt her body dissolving into light, her soul stretching across the firmament. "Do not break again," she murmured. Her voice was soft, almost lost to the wind. "Hold for them." The sky sealed itself with a sound like a heartbeat, steady and deep. The colors of the stones spread across the heavens, blending into a luminous arc that glowed even through the clouds. It shimmered with the hues of her sacrifice, the first rainbow, born not of rain, but of devotion. The world exhaled. The rivers calmed, the fires stilled. The people she had molded looked upward, their eyes wide with wonder. They did not know what she had given, only that the storm had ceased and the heavens once more arched above them. Nuwa fell to her knees, her hands still glowing faintly from the divine heat. Her body ached, her palms burned, but her heart was steady. Fusi approached her, his expression a mix of awe and sorrow. "You could have perished," he said softly.
She turned to him, her lips curved in a faint smile. "I did," she answered. "A part of me did, but what remains is enough." He reached for her hand, and for a moment the world seemed to still around them. She looked at the sky, her sky, patched and imperfect, yet alive with light. The cracks no longer looked like wounds, they were veins, glowing with the memory of her touch. She rose, her movements slow, almost human now. The divine glow around her dimmed, softened into warmth. When she breathed, her breath carried the scent of rain after fire, clean, gentle, alive. Around her, the people began to sing. Their voices rose in gratitude, though they did not know her name. Nuwa listened, her heart swelling with something that felt like joy and grief intertwined. Their song was imperfect, their rhythm uncertain, and that, to her, was beautiful. She lifted her face toward the new heavens, feeling the soft drizzle of cooling rain upon her skin. It ran down her arms, tracing paths of silver light. For the first time, she felt the weight of her body, tired, trembling, real, and she welcomed it. Fushi stood beside her in silence, watching the rainbow shimmer above them. "You have made the heavens whole again," he whispered. Nuwa shook her head gently. "No," she said, "I have made them alive." She closed her eyes, her breath mingling with the sigh of the wind. Within that stillness, she felt everything: the pulse of the earth, the rhythm of the rivers, the trembling gratitude of the creatures she had saved. Her sacrifice had bound her to them, not as a goddess apart, but as the heartbeat within all things. The sky no longer separated heaven from earth. It united them. It was her body, her memory, her love, stretched thin and luminous across eternity. As the last drops of rain fell, Nuwa smiled faintly. The cracks had been mended, yet she knew they would always remain visible, reminders that even divinity could break, and in breaking, become whole.
The storm had passed. The sky, once wounded and torn, now shimmered with soft veins of color, remnants of the stones she had placed with her own burning hands. Each hue lingered like a breath across the heavens, faint yet eternal, the delicate scars of salvation. The world below exhaled, bathed in the hush that follows creation. Rivers resumed their steady murmurs. The mountains stood firm again, and the wind whispered through the grass with a gentleness that had never before existed. But Nuwa did not glow as she once had. The brilliance that had filled her being, that celestial warmth which made the pulse of creation, now seemed diffused, scattered through the world around her. When she breathed, the trees stirred. When she blinked, the clouds shifted. Her divinity no longer dwelled within her alone. It had spread across the living earth, into stone, water, and sky. She stood at the edge of a great lake, its surface still rippling from the echoes of the storm. Her reflection trembled before her, faint, softer, no longer framed in light, but in shadow and breath. She touched the surface, and for a fleeting instant she saw the glow of her former self shimmer beneath the water like a star sinking into the depths. Then it faded. Fuxi approached, his steps soundless, his eyes searching her face. He murmured, "You are quiet." Nuwa nodded, her gaze never leaving the reflection. She said softly, "The heavens no longer sing to me as they once did. Their song is everywhere now. I hear it in the rustle of leaves, in the sigh of rain, in the laughter of those who live." He replied with the tremor of something deeper. "You have given much, more than even the heavens deserved." She smiled faintly. "Perhaps, but to create is to give, to love is to let go." Her voice was calm, but within it lingered the tremor of something deeper, a serene sorrow, an ache that neither pain nor regret could name. She turned her hands over, studying the faint golden scars along her palms, remnants of divine fire. They no longer burned, they pulsed gently, like memories still warm. Around them, life unfolded in quiet reverence. The people she had shaped moved through the forests and fields, their laughter carried on the wind. Some gathered flowers, some built small fires, others looked up at the rainbow arcing faintly across the sky. They did not know her sacrifice, yet their joy bore its reflection. Each heartbeat was a fragment of her essence, each smile an echo of her love. She watched them with a tenderness that ached. She said, "They will live. They will stumble, forget, begin again, and through them I will continue to exist." Fuxi's gaze softened. "And you, how will you become now?"
Her eyes turned toward the horizon, where the heavens met the sea. The light of dawn trembled there, pale and trembling, like a secret not yet spoken. "Something smaller," she whispered, "something quieter. I have scattered myself too wide to remain whole, but perhaps that is the point." She took a step into the lake. The water reached her ankles, cool and clear. It shimmered against her skin as though recognizing her, welcoming her home. "Once I wanted to fill the world with beauty. Now I only wish to listen to it breathe." The wind moved through her hair, carrying her words across the surface of the lake. The reflection of the rainbow rippled, its colors bending over her body, wrapping her in soft hues of red and gold. She closed her eyes, her expression serene. Fushi stood at the shore, watching her. "You are fading," he said, though his voice was tender, not afraid. "I am returning," she corrected him. "The world cannot live apart from what made it. It must carry me, as the rivers carry the moon." He reached out a hand, as though to touch her, but stopped short. Her form shimmered, not disappearing, but dissolving, like mist melting into dawn. Every droplet of water that touched her skin glowed faintly, then dimmed, carrying a fragment of her spirit away. Nuwa opened her eyes once more. "Tell them," she said softly, her voice almost a breath, "not my name, only that the sky was mended by love." Then she smiled, a small human smile, full of quiet joy and exhaustion. The light around her deepened, then spread outward, fanning across the lake and through the trees. For a moment, the entire world seemed to glow. Then the light faded, leaving only the still water and the whisper of wind. Fushi knelt where she had stood. His reflection stared back at him, framed now by the soft glow of dawn. The air around him pulsed with her presence, faint yet everywhere. He dipped his hand into the lake. The water was warm, alive. "You are not gone," he murmured. "You have only become everything." In the days that followed, the earth seemed changed. Rain fell more gently, as if guided by a tender hand. Flowers bloomed in strange places, from cracks in stone, from the edges of cliffs. When the wind blew, it carried with it the scent of clay and lightning. The people looked up at the sky and smiled, though none could say why. The rainbow remained, arching faintly through each dawn. It became the promise of balance, the mark of a world mended through sacrifice. And when thunder rolled through the heavens, the mortals said it was Nuwa's heartbeat, reminding them that even the divine could love. Fushi wandered the earth, tracing her presence in every whisper of creation. He saw her in the shimmer of water, in the warmth of fire, in the rhythm of human breath.
Sometimes when the horizon burned with color, he would speak softly to the air. "You are still here." And the wind, gentle and sweet, would answer with a sigh, not of sorrow, but of peace. Over time, the mortals built stories around the rainbow and the goddess who had mended the sky. They said her body had become the stones of the heavens, her tears the pearls of the rivers, her voice the call of cranes at dawn. No one remembered her face, but all remembered her gift. The balance she had restored was not perfect. Storms still came, rivers still rose, and hearts still broke. But beneath every loss lingered her quiet assurance that even in imperfection, love endured. The world no longer belonged to the gods. It breathed with the pulse of her sacrifice. In the vast stillness between one breath and the next, if one listened closely enough, one could still hear her heartbeat, steady, soft, woven through the earth itself. And so the world went on. The sky above bore its luminous scars, the earth below thrummed with new life. Between them flowed the quiet presence of the goddess who had given all, her essence now diffused into every ripple, every sigh, every living thing. The heavens were whole again, but Nuwa was changed. She no longer stood apart from creation. She was creation. The sensual fire of her longing had softened into peace, and the sorrow of her sacrifice had become the song of the world. Her story did not end in silence, but in breath, the endless rhythm of life that whispered her name without ever speaking it aloud.
There are myths that end in triumph, others that dissolve into sorrow. Yet Nuwa's story breathes between the two, suspended like mist over the surface of still water. Her tale does not conclude in victory or defeat, but in a silence so full it trembles. When her hands sealed the wounded sky, when her light bled into the heavens, she did not vanish, she simply became quieter. The universe, once chaotic and raw, began to hum softly, like a body remembering the rhythm of a heartbeat. The pulse of her creation continued in the rivers, in the wind, in us. She was never meant to rule from above. Nuwa was a goddess of intimacy, of closeness, of contact. She did not create from command, but from yearning. Her divine act was not about power, it was about need. The desire to fill the emptiness around her, to see warmth bloom where cold once reigned. When she touched the clay, it was as though she were touching her own loneliness, shaping it into companions who could love, suffer, and dream. The sensuality of her creation did not lie in the body itself, but in the tenderness of intent, the slow, deliberate caress of a being who longed to feel the echo of herself in another. Now the heavens she repaired still shimmer faintly with her essence. The golden stones she forged to mend the sky gleam with the memory of her tears, a goddess's sorrow solidified into beauty. Those scars are the world's most sacred truth, that all perfection is born from imperfection, and that every act of love carries the trace of loss. Nuwa's body, her warmth, her yearning are no longer separate from what we see and breathe. The air itself remembers her sigh. Every stream that murmurs through the mountains carries her voice, low, melodic, filled with longing. Every gust of wind is her exhale. The very clay that forms the bones of the earth is her skin. And within every human pulse, every tremor of emotion, her heart continues to beat. We are her continuation, the living vessels of her unfinished dream. She sculpted us from need, but she also gave us the one flaw that keeps her presence alive, the inability to be whole without another. We chase love as she once did. We reach toward one another with trembling hands, hoping that contact will quiet the ache. Yet the ache is divine. It is Nuwa's gift, the fragment of her loneliness that she placed in every living soul. To feel longing is to be close to her. To love, even imperfectly, is to complete her act of creation once more.
And though she restored the heavens, she did not erase their fragility. The cracks remain, glowing veins of gold against the blue expanse, a reminder that balance is not a permanent state, but a breathing one. The world endures through care, through constant repair. It is held together not by strength, but by tenderness. That is the lesson she left behind, that creation is not a single act, but a continuous gesture, renewed every time someone chooses to heal rather than destroy. The sensuality of her myth lingers in the small details of existence, in the way dew gathers on petals at dawn, like tears of desire reborn into beauty, in the way sunlight glides across skin, reminding us of warmth that once belonged to a goddess, in the quiet pulse beneath our fingertips when we touch another's hand. Each of these sensations is a whisper of Nuwa's presence, the union of the divine and the mortal, of love and fragility. And perhaps that is why her story endures, not because she was powerful, but because she was vulnerable. Her greatness lies in her surrender, in the moment she let her longing become the world. Through her, we learn that love and creation are inseparable, that to make anything lasting, be it art, life, or connection, we must offer a piece of ourselves. We must risk breaking. We must mend what we did not shatter and love what may never be whole again. Even the rainbow, born from her labor and tears, is not just a symbol of beauty, but of devotion. Each band of color is an emotion she released into the world. Red for passion, blue for sorrow, gold for devotion, violet for longing. When it appears after storms, it is her voice returning, reminding the heavens that light can still follow ruin. Humanity looks up, and though they no longer know her name, they feel her promise. She exists in that pause, in that quiet awe, in the upward gaze of wonder that all creatures share. When the sky darkens and thunder trembles, it is easy to forget her. But even then, she lingers, in the silence between lightning and rain. She is in the pause before forgiveness, in the breath taken before a confession of love. She dwells in the delicate moments when creation and destruction blur, when a heart breaks only to open wider.
Nuwa's story is not a myth to be told and forgotten. It is a mirror in which the human spirit recognizes itself. She embodies the eternal paradox, the divine that longs for humanity, and humanity that reaches for the divine. To live is to continue her gesture, to mold the world each day with our choices, our care, our small repairs. Each act of kindness is a golden stone pressed into the sky. Each word of love, a thread that keeps the world from falling apart.
Her legacy is not the heaven she saved, but the tenderness she left within all things. Even the smallest creature carries it, the instinct to nurture, to mend, to protect. That is the true essence of divinity, not distance, but closeness, not perfection, but compassion. The sacred lies not in the untouched, but in the touched, in the embrace, in the reaching, in the hands that dare to shape something new. When we close our eyes and feel the pulse beneath our skin, we touch the same rhythm that guided her fingers through the clay. We are the continuation of her sigh, her heartbeat, her longing. The fragile, exquisite ache of existence is not our curse, but our inheritance. It is proof that we were made by love and for love. So let us remember her not as a goddess lost to time, but as the gentle breath between every beginning and every ending. Let us see her reflection in the quiet gestures, in the way two strangers smile, in the way light spills through a crack, in the way the world keeps choosing to live despite its wounds. That persistence is her divinity. The heavens may no longer need mending, but hearts always will. And each time we reach to heal them, each time we choose tenderness over apathy, we perform her miracle again. The act of creation continues, not in fire or thunder, but in the soft, unending movement of love. The sky she mended still holds. The earth she touched still breathes. And within every act of care, every spark of desire, every whisper of connection, the heart of Nuwa still beats. Patient, luminous, eternal.